This video, we're going to get started talking about files, working with files in Python. So most applications that we use files to store things, right? If you're writing on a word processor, it's going to write it to a file. And then when you want to look at it again, you're able to pull it up from that file. So files are pretty common. So for that reason, we're going to be in PyCharm instead of in Google Colaboratory. Google Colaboratory supports files, but it's an additional step. There's more to do. And I want to keep this as simple as possible. Okay, so we're in PyCharm. It means that for class, you'll need to have a USB flash drive with you because the lab computers are weird about where you can save things. Okay, so the first thing I've got on my little screen here, that there are two types of files. There are text files, also known as plain text files, that just contain letters and characters, and they're easily readable by anybody. The others are binary files, and they contain specialized formatting. If you ever look at a Word, Microsoft Word document inside of a text editor, you're going to see a bunch of crazy stuff, a bunch of control characters. Okay, so in this course, we only talk about text files. That's all we have to worry about. Okay, and in general, when we're going to open up a new file for reading or for doing anything, we're going to have a file name, so the file variable name. Okay, that's the name of our file. It's going to be equal to the open function, which takes a file name. Okay, and it takes a mode. Okay, so the mode's important. So let's talk about the modes we can have for opening a file. Okay. The first mode we can have is R. Okay. That's reading only. This assumes that the file exists and is able to be read. Okay. We have W, which is a write only. Okay. For this one, it's important. Got to use this one sparingly. If a file exists, it deletes it and creates a new one. Okay. So when you get done with the write, you have a new file, whether you had a new one there before or not. Okay. And then the third one is A or append mode. Okay. In this one, new data is written to the end of the file. If it exists, if not, it creates a new. Okay. So that's kind of where we're headed as far as the commands that we can do. So let's look at an example. Okay. So in this one, we're going to write 3 lines of data to the file. Okay. My screen just went out, but I think it comes back in a second. So, well, yeah, hopefully that's all okay. Very strange my screen does it. Anyway, we'll figure it out. If you see me pause, that's probably why. To figure out what's doing. It's just the monitor, not the computer, luckily. Okay, so this we're going to have our def main as always. Okay, and I'm going to go ahead and put my main in so I won't forget it, because there's a tendency for me to forget it. Okay, so first I'm going to open a file named philosophers.txt. Okay. So to do that, I'm going to say out file is equal to open philosophers.txt, comma, W. Okay, open it for writing. Okay, that should be an equals. That's why it's giving me squiggles. Okay. Don't know what it wants there. Got an opening, closing quote. Opening, closing that. And maybe it'll work itself out. Expected what? End of statement expected. Well, it got an end of statement. Yeah, I'm not sure what it's doing. We'll figure that one out. Okay. So now we want to write to the file. Okay. To do that, we're going to use the out file, its file name, dot write. Okay, we opened it for writing. Oh, there's 2. That's the issue. Yeah, now I see it. Now there are none. Okay, give me just one single quote there. It tries to help me out, and it's not. That's what I need to delete. Should be good now, I think. It still seems unhappy. I'm not sure why. got a comma, we've got a W in quotes. Yeah, I don't know. Let's see what it says here. Missing closing quote. No. Okay, let's just try this again. Single quote W, single quote. Oh, I see the whole issue. I'm not ending it there. That was the issue. Well, that's a fun little fandango, isn't it? Okay, yeah, now we're good. Okay, so I'm gonna do a write. Okay. And what I'm gonna write to the file is the name of a philosopher, John Locke. And then to organize my file, I'm going to do a new line character every time. Okay. So I'm going to write that one. I'm going to do an out file, write David U. And out file dot write Edmund Burke. Okay. Written all those. Okay. Then I can close the file. Out file dot close. Okay. So this doesn't assume that a file is there. It's going to go ahead and create the file. Note that this will create the file wherever the program's stored in the same directory. So I would make sure that you start a new project in PyCharm on your flash drive, create a new program there, and then the file written will be from there. Okay. So if I run this, making sure I run the correct one. Okay. It's now created, execute 0. Okay. And if I were to go look in the directory, in fact, you can see here, the philosophers.txt shows up, and there it is. So PyCharm shows the text files as well. Okay. With the new line in between. So no issues there at all. Okay. So if I wanted to add more to this, I wouldn't want to use write. I would want to use append and would add them to the end. Okay. So now that we've done this, we can go ahead. I'm just going to overwrite this. Let's say we want to read from the file. So I'm just going to change this to an R. Okay, file's already out there. If I would run this again, I get the same exact file. It would delete it and recreate it. Okay. But instead of writing to the file, I want to read from the file. I'll still have a close. Okay, so the read from the file, have some options here. I'm going to, in this case, I'm going to say file contents is equal to infile.read. And I need to change the name. Again, I'm reading from it, so it's an input file, so I'm going to change it to infile. Okay, infile.read. That's going to be my infile.close at the end. Okay. So once I've read it and closed the file, I can just print the file contents. Okay. So this reads the entire file into a big long string. Okay. I run this now. It's going to print all the things in the file. Okay. Note, I have another option. If I didn't want to do it that way, I could, instead of doing a read, I can do a read line. Okay. And the read line, if I do this, you'll see that I'm just going to print out the very first one, the John Locke. Okay. So instead I could do like a line 1, a line 2 is equal to infile.read line. And then line 3 is equal to infile.read line. Okay. How do we know how many lines there are? We're going to have to worry about that probably Wednesday. Okay, so then we have a line 1, comma, line 2, comma, line 3. Okay. I run this, reads the file, just like that. Okay. Spacing is a little weird because this adds a space, and each of these have their own new line character built in. Okay. So reading line by line is a useful thing as well. So read reads the whole thing, read line reads just that one line. Okay. So other things that we have to do here, if we're writing so back to our output program, our out file program, we're writing to a file. If we write a string, we can add new line character, and it's not a problem. Okay. But if we're entering numbers, which we often do, we're going to have to concatenate. We're going to have to add a string to the file when we're writing it. Okay. So when we do this, this will make sure that our files print properly. Okay. And it could be as simple as, so let's say when we're doing our output. Okay. I'm sure to say the output file, but I didn't. Okay. So we're on our out file. Open it for write mode. Okay. And then let's say instead of so then we have something like S is equal to Bob. Okay, we're create Bob as a philosopher. If I were to do an out file dot write S, okay, then that's not going to give us the new line character that we need. Okay, so in this write, I need to do an S manually plus the new line character. Okay. So when I'm doing the read line on the other way coming in, if I don't want that new line character there, okay, so I'm not going to run this. So this should still have the same stuff that it had before. Okay. So if I do my in file, opening it with read permissions, then change this to my in file. Okay, and then I'm going to say line 1 is equal to in file dot read line, sorry. Okay. I can then say line 1 is equal to line 1 dot R strip. Okay, that's going to strip from the right side any ending new line characters. Okay, then if I do a line 2 is equal to in file dot read line, and then again line 2 is equal to line 2 dot R strip. So I'm going to strip from the right the new line characters. That gets rid of those. And if I print line 1 and line 2, you will see that they are put together with no new line character. You'll often want to do that when you're dealing with data. Okay. So appending to an existing file works, more or less the same way, except that we would be adding on to what we already have. Okay. So if we're dealing with numeric data, we have a couple of more issues to deal with. Okay, so now we have our out file. Screen went off again, so we'll wait a second for it to come back. Curious if it shows up in your video that way. It may. If so, it's my computer doing something weird. I'm opening it to write. I'm going to close it here. Skip that for now. Okay. But this time, I've had the user enter a number. So num1 is equal to 12. Num2 is equal to 45.5. Okay. If I want to write the file, this has to be a string. If I just say num1, okay, and try to run it, it's going to give me an error here. Okay, this has to be a string. So how do I make it a string? I put the str function around it. Okay, and then I can go ahead, since it's a string, I can concatenate a new line character to it. Okay. Okay, that could do the same thing. Okay, so let me do num2. Okay. So go ahead and run this. Shouldn't give us an error now. Shouldn't. Okay. Now our philosophers, our poorly named philosophers.txt should have two files there. We're not going to, in the same program, go ahead and say in file is equal to open. What that's all doing. Philosophers.txt. Okay. I'm going to open that for reading. Go ahead and do an in file .close before I forget it. Okay. Now, when I want to read in the number, it's still a string. Okay, so I could say num1 is equal to in file dot read line. Okay. And when I do this, okay, we have to send this output to an int. Okay, so I can say int of all of that stuff. Okay. And then I can print. Well, let's go ahead and do num2 as well. So we want to see that they're numbers. They would print even if they weren't numbers. So I should be able to get num2 from my file. And then I should be able to print num1 plus num2. Okay. Doesn't like something. Oh, that wasn't an int. That's a float. Let's give that error. Yeah, now we're good. Okay. And it gives us what those two numbers added together were. Okay. Which is correct. Okay, so that's the basics of files. We'll cover more later in the week, but we have the idea. We're going to open up a file. And again, my screen's gone blank, so hopefully, I don't know if you can see me or not. We'll see. When you're opening a file, you can open it for reading, to read from a file that exists. Writing, if you want to be sure you're creating a new file, or appending if you want to add to an existing file. Okay. In addition to that, we always have to write a string to a file with a new line character at the end. Always want to read, so when they come back, it's going to be a string with a new line character at the end. Okay. So for writing a number, we're going to have to convert it to a string. If we're reading a number, we have to convert it to an int or a float, whichever one it is. Okay. We have the read, which reads the entire file, which we don't tend to do much of. We tend to instead do a read line, which reads the current line. Okay. We're storing all of our data items, each one on its own line. We'll get later in the chapter, we talk about reading records, which allows us to have multiple bits of data on the same line. Okay. So that's an introduction to files. We'll work more on this in lab or in class on Monday, and make sure you have a flash drive with you.